Good evening. It being November 8th at 7:32, I would ask that we call the meeting to order. First, let me thank the trustees for coming, our department heads for coming. Again, Grange, who's out here in force, we appreciate it. Due to COVID, we would ask that everybody continue to wear their mask during the meeting, and if possible, separate by approximately 6 feet. As always, there'll be a video of this meeting. It's being broadcast on cable television, YouTube, and is available on Facebook, as well as posted to our website. At this time, I would ask Clerk Saladino to call the roll.
Trustee Augustine?
Here.
Trustee Gale?
Here.
Trustee Katinik?
Here.
Trustee O'Brien?
Here.
Trustee Peterson?
Here.
Trustee McGee?
And Trustee McGee contacted me earlier today. She had a medical emergency with a family member and will not be able to attend tonight, but she is going to be watching. So thank you for that.
And President Kukler?
And here. At this time, I'd ask Clerk Saladino to request that the audience stand and lead us in the pledge.
Please rise.
Okay, again, we are following in the village the COVID protocols. I will ignore, even though the Bears are playing tonight, ignore my comments about Aaron Rodgers and move right forward to stormwater management. Again, since a significant storm in June, we've been reporting on the village's efforts to reduce flooding, find funding for flooding mitigation, and we're continuing to do that. We retained Chris Burke Engineering to look at some options. They're continuing to work on those. Regardless of which solution that we move towards, we're really going to need partners. The Metropolitan Water Reclamation District, Illinois Department of Transportation, Cook County, and the federal government really need to assist us in coming to a solution. It is a regional problem. We're going to need a regional solution. Since our last meeting, the village did hold their strategic planning session, and we discussed funding of our infrastructure, which includes roads, water mains, and sewers, both in the long term and short term. It's clear it's a priority of the full board, as well as all of our department heads. I've also participated in a couple of meetings conducted by Lyons Township, regarding regional stormwater issues. They were attended also by Grange, as well as the key engineers from MWRD and some other key staffers, including Executive Director Brian Perkovitz. So the MWRD is obviously taking this area seriously and trying to get resources and move forward. Tonight, we are planning to adjourn into a closed session to discuss pending litigation. That is because we have a scheduled mediation tomorrow on the litigation. We will, of course, be participating in good faith. We're hoping that the quarry will do the same, and maybe we can move forward. Regardless of what happens tomorrow, we'll continue to update the community on our efforts and any progress. Unfortunately, on November 1st, the police department received a report of an armed robbery in the area of Harris and Madison Avenues. Thankfully, nobody was injured. The vehicle and its occupants, the offenders, were transported to the police department, and ultimately charges were filed against one individual. The charges were 1 count of armed robbery, which is a Class X felony, and 1 count of theft of property from a person, a Class 3 felony, an X being more severe. We, of course, want to thank Chief Gates, Deputy Chief Wardlow, and the men and women of LaGrange Police Department for the responsiveness, quick and thorough efforts, and the professionalism. We would also like to thank Brookfield and McCook Police Departments, which assisted on the traffic stop, as well as the Countryside Police Department, which one of the people in the car, I would loosely call it the getaway car, but anyway, one of the people in that car was a female, and Countryside was able to accommodate holding her while the state's attorneys and the police departments did their full investigation. So again, we would like to thank and recognize our department for their outstanding police work, as well as thank our neighboring communities for their assistance. Also, major case assistance team provided assistance. And Chief, I'll kick it to you in case I missed anything, misstated anything, or failed to recognize somebody. Please fill it in.
There we go. All right. Thank you, President Kukler. Shortly after 8 o'clock on the 1st, LTAC, our Regional Communications Center, received a 911 call from the victim of an armed robbery. LTAC did an excellent job in getting all of the information and quickly dispatching that information to include a description of the offender, the offending vehicle, I should say, and its last known direction of travel. The victim did an excellent job, complied with the demands of the individual that was holding him while possessing a firearm. He was an excellent witness, was able to get a great description of the offender, was able to get an excellent and complete description of the vehicle, as well as close to obtaining the exact registration as reasonably possible. And with all of that information, we were able to quickly locate the vehicle. Actually, within 7 minutes of the call, one of our officers was able to locate the vehicle and followed the vehicle and broadcast his location in an effort to get additional officers from surrounding communities to join him prior to initiating a traffic stop. Once he had those assisting units from Brookfield and McCook, the officer made the stop in the area of Plainfield Road and East Avenue, and all 3 occupants of the vehicle were taken into custody without incident. The deputy chief and I both are incredibly impressed and proud of the efforts of everybody involved, from the dispatchers to the officers on the scene to our investigators that worked tirelessly over 48 hours to ensure that we had a rock-solid case against the offender that actually committed the armed robbery. So thank you.
Thank you, Chief, and that really, summarizes it well. It was 48 hours of round-the-clock police work to make sure that all the T's were crossed, I's were dotted, a rock-solid case, and our community's safer, our region's safer because of their hard work. So we do appreciate it. Thank you very much. Veterans Day is this Thursday, November 11th. The village offices will be closed, but we on the village board want to take this opportunity to recognize and honor all of our military veterans. We want to recognize the veterans that work for our team. We have a number of police officers, firefighters, and public works employees who are veterans representing all branches of the military. Some are currently serving in the reserves. We appreciate their efforts. Our most recent hire, Director of Public Works, Rick Colby, is a graduate of the Military Academy, the Coast Guard Academy. I think he may be our first Academy graduate that's been employed by the village, and so that's exciting, and we appreciate your service to protecting us as well as all our other veterans. So that's fantastic. The American Legion on LaGrange Road will be holding a Veterans Day ceremony at 11 a.m. The post is located at 900 South LaGrange, and the public, of course, is welcomed, and we'd encourage everybody to attend. It's always a pleasure to report that LaGrange was voted the best downtown by Suburban Life's 2021 Reader's Choice Award. The honor would not be possible without support of our businesses, employees, the LGBA, working as partners to make sure we're a premier downtown destination. Again, on Saturday, November 27th, will be Small Business Saturday. We're encouraging everybody to do their shopping, their pre-holiday shopping on November 27th, support our local businesses. There'll also be a celebrate our businesses with a big sales to kick off the holidays, featuring limited time offers and discounts that will occur again on the 27th from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. And you can always go on the LGBA's website, www.lagrangeevents.com, for more information. Keeping in the same theme, to discover the holiday magic in LaGrange as we deck the halls and light up the season with festive activities and experiences for the entire family during hometown holidays in LaGrange. Get a head start on your shopping, discover the trendiest gifts of the season, and mark your calendar for a tree lighting and Santa's arrival on Saturday, December 4th. More information will be provided later this evening regarding details of the event. The Holiday Wish Book, which was so successful last year, went live today and will feature a digital catalog of unique small business gifts and offerings for the holiday season. Again, you can get more information at www.lagrangeevents.com. Nancy Cummings from the LGBA is here tonight. And Nancy, do you want to add anything or emphasize anything? I appreciate that. For people at home, Nancy said that we covered it all, but just make sure you come out and shop on Saturday, November 27th. So thank you. And at this time, I'd ask if there's a village manager's report.
Thank you, President Kugler. The village's administrative offices will be closed on Thursday, November 25th, and Friday, November 26th for the Thanksgiving holiday. Regular business hours will resume on Monday, November 29th at 8:30 a.m. The next regularly scheduled village board meeting on November 22nd is expected to be canceled. As always, a full complement of public safety personnel will be on call to respond to any emergencies. And we wish everyone a safe, happy, and healthy Thanksgiving. Thank you.
Thank you, Village Manager Peterson. At this time, I would ask that Clerk Saladino read the items on the consent portion of the agenda, followed by the items under current business.
Matters on the consent agenda will be considered by a single motion and vote because they have already been considered fully by the board at a previous meeting or have been determined to be of a routine nature. Any member of the Board of Trustees may request that an item be moved from the consent agenda to the current business for separate consideration. On the consent agenda, item A, ordinance, design review permit number 113 for 100 West Callender, Oak Properties Limited Partnership. Item B, minutes of the Village of LaGrange Board of Trustees regular meeting, Monday, October 11, 2021. Item C, minutes of the Village of LaGrange Board of Trustees regular meeting, Monday, October 25th, 2021. Item D, consolidated voucher 211025, and item E, consolidated voucher 211108. Current business agenda items include consideration of matters being presented to the Board of Trustees for action. Two items tonight. Item A, LaGrange Business Association 2021 Holiday Walk requests for village sponsorship and hometown holiday promotion. And item B, preliminary review of the proposed 2021 property tax levy request.
Thank you, Clerk Saladino. At this time, I would ask if anybody has any comments on matters on tonight's agenda. Please come up.
Evening. My name is Andrew James. I serve on the Police Pension Board. It's been an honor to do that for the last several terms. I forget how much time I've spent there, but it's been an honor. And tonight, I just wanted to give a little voice and context to the letter that we sent you requesting funds from the village. We made a somewhat extraordinary request of asking for the teeniest little bit more than the actuarial assumptions called for, and just want to give a little flavor as to why we did that. We did that in the past once before, and I know I've bored you guys in the past and in previous years on this subject, so I'll try to be brief. But one of the things, and you'll hear from the actuaries later tonight, it'd be worth having them elaborate on, or you to question them on, is that, and I won't try to distill actuarial science, but it's math based on assumptions, and it does, they call out, the actuaries call out various risks that the village faces, or the plan faces rather. And the math doesn't account for that level of risk. They call it out, and there's no way to kind of accommodate for that. And the risks that we call out to you are why we're asking for incrementally more than what the actuarial plan would allow. And to be clear, we're asking for the amount that was previously budgeted, so we don't feel like we're putting undue pressure on the village. And it's largely a symbolic gesture, but we feel it's an important one. And we recognize there are competing interests with the limited funds that we have as a village. So I fully recognize that. But there are three things that I would just highlight about the risks that the plan faces. One is the mix of active versus current or retirees. Our mix is bad from an actuarial standpoint in that we have more retirees currently. That puts pressure on the plan. And the fact that we have another risk measure that Lauterbach and Amon called out that has improved, admittedly, to 10%, which is, I believe, the payout ratio relative to the amount we're accruing at. We assume that we're going to earn 7% on the plan. It's at 10%. It was 12% last year, but we had a plus 30% return in the portfolio, which is extraordinary. Everyone would probably agree on that. We can't bank on extraordinary returns into the future. And I would argue that the last point, that our discount rate is too high. You've heard me on this before. It's a contentious issue. I realize it's not an easy issue and there's no answer. The challenge I would issue to, or I feel the obligation that I have, I guess, more as a citizen than as a member of the police pension, but one that's moderately informed on this issue, is that by having too high of a discount rate and not recognizing these risks, my fear is that this board is delaying risks to future boards. So what I'm asking you to do is recognize that there are risks in the plan. One way to mitigate that is to fund it at a higher level, recognizing competing interests. But if you fund it at a higher level, all you're doing is, if I'm wrong and the discount rate is appropriate, or we do better than that, is you're doing a favor for future boards down the line, in that you'll have surplus and you won't have to draw against it. I've gone on too long, but thank you for listening to me.
Thank you, Mr. James, and thank you for serving on the Police Pension Board. Any further comments on items on the agenda tonight? Seeing none, I would ask for a motion on our consent agenda.
I'll make a motion to accept the consent agenda as presented.
And a second?
Second.
Thank you, trustees. Any discussion? Trustee Augustine.
I just had one small housekeeping notation. It was in our minutes from last meeting, or the last 2 meetings ago. It was attributed to me that I asked Classic Cinemas for their timeline for improvements, and that was Trustee Kotinik. So just a small change there to make the minutes accurate, at least from my viewpoint.
All right, we can do that and still move forward, I believe, with the motion, and then you probably want to recuse yourself as usual. Or I don't know if we have any bills.
Well, just as a matter of course, yes. As previously stated, I recuse myself from voting on items on the agenda related to our village prosecutor.
All right, and again, I'm not sure that we have any, but thank you for that. Any other comments on the consent agenda? Seeing none, I'd ask Clerk Saladino to do a roll call vote.
Trustee O'Brien?
Aye.
Trustee Peterson?
Aye.
Trustee Augustine?
Aye.
Trustee Gale?
Aye.
Trustee Kotinik?
Aye.
Trustee McGee's not here.
And the motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Moving on to current business, At this time, under A, we have the LaGrange Business Association's Holiday Walk and request for sponsorship and hometown holiday presentation. I would ask that Trustee Augustine introduce that.
Thank you very much, President Kukler. As always, it's a pleasure to be able to present something that's fun and festive and positive. We don't get to do that at all meetings. Thanks once again to the LGBA and the village for what we're going to be speaking about tonight. So after many of us having a quite different holiday experience last year in our homes and in our town, this year we are back to normal to some degree, to a better degree. And so tonight we will be discussing and voting on a request from the LaGrange Business Association, who is seeking authorization and financial support for our annual holiday walk to be held on Saturday, December 4th, from 5 to 9 p.m. As in the past, activities will start with an all-village sing. I think Mark leads that, usually, and President Kukler, I should say, followed by Santa's arrival by fire truck and the traditional lighting of the village tree. Assuming no changes in COVID public health protocols, Santa is again proposed to be seated right here in the Village Hall auditorium together with Mrs. Claus for photos. The LGBA intends to have a group of string musicians performing in the lobby of the Village Hall to entertain families as they wait to visit Santa. Local choirs will be invited to perform on the steps of the Village Hall from 6 to 8 p.m. Local merchants will also welcome shoppers into their stores with a variety of activities, specials, and sweet treats. Also, as in the past, the holiday walk will include a North Pole Express kiddie train ride, a petting zoo, a shopper's trolley service, and ice sculptures displayed through the village. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, there was not a traditional holiday walk in 2020. Instead, the village and the LGBA presented a package of attractions and promotions that provided safe experiential opportunities for families and robust online offerings so customers could engage local businesses in person or remotely. The 2019 overall expenses for the holiday walk were approximately $33,000. The LGBA anticipates similar event expenses again in 2021. To help defray marketing and operational costs of the event, the LGBA is requesting that the village co-sponsor the annual holiday walk in the amount of $16,000, as is provided for in the village's fiscal year 2021-2022 budget. In August, we, right here on the board, approved a marketing contract with Ripson Communications. As part of that contract, Ripson provides aggressive marketing and publicity efforts for the holiday season. The campaign, which is underway now and continues through Christmas, promotes general holiday shopping in LaGrange, as well as Small Business Saturday, November 24th, and the holiday walk on December 4th, and the digital holiday wish book, as President Kukler referenced earlier. I recommend that the village again support the LGBA's request for sponsorship of the holiday walk in an amount not to exceed $16,000 with the following conditions: that the LGBA will demonstrate good faith efforts to acquire cash sponsorship to match the village contributions, that the LGBA provide a complete final accounting for this event no later than March 1st, 2022, that the LaGrange Business Association will provide a complete financial statement for the organization for fiscal year 2020 and 2021, and the Village of LaGrange is to be prominently listed on all advertising, including but not limited to posters, websites, and newspaper advertising. All advertising is to be approved by village staff prior to public presentation. The LGBA will comply with all insurance, hold harmless, and indemnification requirements of the village, and all events are to be coordinated to the village satisfaction. In addition, the board will need to also formally approve the closure of Calendar Avenue from Ashland to just west of the entrance to Lot 5. I'd like to recommend and support and move to a vote all of the items said above.
So you've moved, Trustee Augustine, and looking for a second?
Second.
Thank you, Trustee Gale. Any discussion? Seeing none, I would ask Clerk Saladino to do a roll call vote.
Trustee Kotinik,
Aye.
Trustee O'Brien,
Aye.
Trustee Peterson,
Aye.
Trustee Augustine?
Aye.
Trustee Gale?
Aye.
Trustee McGee is absent.
And that passes unanimously. Thank you. And thank you, Nancy, again, and for all the efforts from the LGBA. It's a great event. We're looking forward to seeing everybody out there. Not nearly as festive, but absolutely necessary. We're moving on to B, the preliminary review of the proposed 2021 property tax levy. And I would ask Trustee Peterson to introduce that.
Well, I was going to say, looking forward to the holiday walk, but back to business here.
All right.
The Truth in Taxation Law requires a preliminary review of proposed property tax levy by corporate authority at least 20 days prior to the adoption of the tax levy to determine if the aggregate levy is more than 5% greater than the preceding year's tax levy extension exclusive of debt service. If the preliminary levy is estimated to exceed the preceding year's levy by more than 5%, the village must hold a public hearing prior to the adoption of the proposed tax levy. The proposed truth in taxation levy request, exclusive of debt service, reflects a total increase of 2.62% over the prior year's extension. Therefore, the Village of LaGrange is not required to hold a public hearing regarding the 2021 property tax levy. The proposed village property tax levy, which includes the 2.62% increase, is also subject to the Property Tax Limitation Acts, also known as property tax caps, which limits the increase exclusive of debt service and new growth to 5% or the National Consumer Price Index, CPI, whichever is less. The CPI rate applicable to 2021 property tax levy is 1.40%. Therefore, the additional 1.22% increase in the tax levy reflects new growth in 2021, which in total is estimated at 10 million EVA equalized assessed value. This estimated new growth includes annual new growth of 5 million equalized assessed valuation from residential, commercial improvements, plus an additional projected increase of 5 million EVA from year 2 of construction at the Mason Point Residential Development Project. Wow. In addition, to note that when the village anticipates significant new growth from development projects, this does not result in an increase in individual homeowners' property taxes. The limiting rate calculation allows the village to include the increased dollar amount of the property tax levy, which is then distributed over a larger EVA base, limiting the overall increase on an individual property strictly to the increase in CPI. Therefore, the impact of the proposed 2021 property tax increase on the average Village of LaGrange home with an estimated market value of $500,000 is an increase of $20.04 from the village property tax levy. The village property tax consists of several separate lines item levies. The general fund levies are utilized to support the village operating expenditures. The general fund levy in total is the amount available under tax cap law after funding the village's pension levies, IMRF, Social Security, and police and fire pension funds. The police and fire pension levies reflect the annual required contributions based upon independent actuarial valuations of each fund for the year ended April 30, 2021. The reports were prepared by the Police and Fire Pensions Fund's independent actuary, Mr. Bob Reese, is here this evening from Lauerbach and Amen, and he will be speaking to us. Both the Police and Fire Pension Fund tax levies were less than budgeted, primarily due to investment income returns being higher than expected. Mr. Schroeder presented the valuation report. Mr. Schroeder of Lauerbach and Amen presented the evaluation report to the Fire Pension Board on Tuesday, October 12th. The Fire Prevention Pension Board unanimously approved the actual required contribution as presented by Lauterbach and Ammon. The village has received a letter from the Fire Prevention Fund Board requesting that the village levy funds based upon the independent actuarial report. Mr. Schroeder also presented the valuation report to the Police Pension Board on Wednesday, October 27th. The village has received a letter from the Police Pension Board requesting that the village levy funds based upon the current budgeted allocation in lieu of the independent actuarial required contribution. The 2021 police pension annual required contribution is approximately $2,500 less than 0.1% less than the current budgeted allocation. Historically, the village has levied for pension based upon the actuarial recommended contributions as they are predicated on long-term funding strategy and known actuarial methods and assumptions which have previously been agreed upon by the village and the pension fund boards. As such, in order to fund both police and fire pension funds on an equitable basis consistent with prior practices, village staff recommends utilizing the recommended employer contributions pursuant to the independent actuary valuations presented as part of the 2021 preliminary property tax levy request. It is important to note that due to the tax cap limitations, any increase in one individual line item levy results in a corresponding decrease in another individual line item levy, with the overall tax levy increase not being affected. As the actuarial required contribution for the police and fire pension levies are approximately $18,000, 0.5% less than expected, additional property tax revenue will be available for the general fund operations during the upcoming fiscal year. In just a minute, I will be asking Mr. Reese from Lauterbach and Ammon to discuss the results of the actuarial valuations in more detail and answer any questions from the village board. I'm sure he's going to do a much better job than I am. The village also leveraged property taxes on behalf of the Grange Library, which is classified as municipal library. The library tax levy also reflects the allowable increase under the Property Tax Limitation Act and is equal to the amount of the increase of the village tax levy request. The impact on an average LaGrange home for the proposed 2021 library property tax levy is an increase of $5.86. So looking at it, it was $20.04 for the village, $20.04 for the village, and $5.86 for the library. Finally, each year the village also files a property tax levy for the Special Service Area number 7 to fund ongoing maintenance of the Central Business District. The Special Service Area levy is not subject to truth and taxation requirements and is adjusted annually by the Consumer Price Index utilized as part of the Property Tax Limitation Act. It should be noted that at this time, the village board is only announcing the 2021 preliminary tax levy for the purpose of determining if the total aggregate levy is more than 5% year's tax levy extension in accordance with truth and taxation requirements ordinance. The ordinance adopting the final 2021 tax levy will be presented at the December 13th, 2021 village board meeting. For the purpose of further discussion, I move that the village board approve the attached resolution announcing an estimated 2021 tax levy of $10,580,551 exclusive of debt service, which is at 2.62% increase over the 2020 levy, tax levy.
Thank you, Trustee Peterson. And a second on that motion.
Second.
Thank you, Trustee Gale. Trustee Peterson, I know you have comments, and then you can invite Mr. Bob Reese up also to discuss, and we can have more comments
Yes.
or questions that the trustees
I do,
have.
I do. This levy that we are accepting tonight does not include the additional funding for the police pension fund. And personally, I will be supporting the inclusion, so we may be amending. And at this time, I would introduce Mr. Bob Reese to take the podium. Sir.
Good evening, everyone. We appreciate this opportunity to speak to you. I believe in your board packets, you do have a copy of our presentation, including all the full reports. I'm not going to go through every report in detail. Hopefully, you do have the condensed presentation that we can go through relatively quickly here. Again, my name is Bob Reitz with Lauterbach and Amon. Todd was not able to be here tonight, but I'm a credentialed actuary who also does this work for 25 years and very suited to speak on this information. The first page, we talk about the recommended contribution for both police and fire. This year, fire, about approximately 1.5 million, increased by about 50,000 from the prior year, if you read the difference between lines 1 and line 2. Similarly, police, approximately 1.9 million this year, increased by about 79,000 from the prior year. And in a moment, I'll go through what those differences were. For a total of approximately $3.4 million to be requested to be contributed this upcoming year. If you recall, when we talk about a recommended contribution, the contribution really consists of two different components. One's your normal cost. Your normal cost is the accrual of benefits for an additional year of service by a police officer or a fighter. So that's a fraction of that contribution. The remaining is the amortization of your unfunded liability. So as it sits right now, combined, the third line, you have approximately $37 million of unfunded liability that we're amortizing over the next 19 years to try to make up for that and try to fund this plan to 100%. What we do when we're funding this, we do it on what we call a level percent of pay basis. So it's a little bit different than a car loan or a mortgage where you contribute one level amount each year until the loan is paid off. We have an increasing payment pattern. So that's why each year we have an expectation that the cost is going to go up, approximately 3.25% in line with your salary increase assumption. We expect those contribution to payments to go up as well. And we'll show you what the expectations are in a few moments as well. Looking at your funded percentages, this year on an AVA basis, approximately 50.4% for police, approximately 48.1% for fire. Both increased by approximately 100 to 200 basis points over the year. And this is, largely in part of the excess asset returns that you did experience this year. But you will note that's on a market value basis. What we do when we do actuarial funding is calculate what we call the actuarial value basis. What that means is we smooth out any investment gains or losses over a 5-year period. So what that does, it dampens the impact of really big gains or really bad losses. So you have a lot of volatility in your contribution. This kind of smooths that out and makes it a little bit cleaner ride over that 5-year period. So to the extent that we had really big investment gains this year, we're still deferring 80% of those. So we did not reflect all those gains. They're going to be used in the future to keep your contribution a little lower than expected, or to offset any adverse asset losses you may experience in the future as well. So that's just one item I want to make sure we're clear on, that although the plan did have such excess gains, it didn't really impact your contribution nearly as much as one would think because of that smoothing mechanism we have in place. Okay. Flipping the page to the reconciliation of the contribution. The first line item is that expected changes. This is that 3.25% increase over the prior year we expect to happen because of certain items as the salary increases, as the attribution of the members going forward. Below that, we have demographic and financial gains and losses that occurred throughout the year that make our assumptions, as best as they can, but they do vary from what we assumed previously. So first item being salaries. For both plans, salaries were a little bit less than what would have been expected. So the contribution came down by about $8,000 for fire, about $1,200 for police, a little bit less than what we assumed. Actuarial experience, so these are more demographic items. Really, there's two components to the actuarial experience, one being demographic. And the next couple pages we discuss, I'm not going to go into all the detail over what happens, but these would be members who retire or new hires or terminations or new disabilities. All those sorts of things have a financial impact to the plan, whether it's increase or decreasing in contributions and liabilities. A second item of part of that experience is also we as actuaries, we use computer software to calculate our numbers, do our projections, do all those sorts of things. We did upgrade our software this year, and it actually decreased the liability for fire and had a minimal impact to police. So we're pretty good there, but it is part of that actuarial experience bucket that's outside of those expected changes. Asset return, greater than expected. You can see the impact of that 30% asset return for both funds here, decreasing your expected contribution by about $74,000 combined. And the last item is contributions greater than or less than expected. It shows an increase of about $18,000. That's just, I know you've been contributing everything that has been requested. It's really just a difference in timing of when the amounts gets levied and then when they actually get collected versus when it actually hits the fund. There's really a 2-year lag difference in place there. So it's really a year behind, causes that reconciliation to show a decrease. But we do know that you've been putting in 100% of what's been requested in the past. Any questions on that so far? I'm going to skip the next couple of pages just with regards to the experience, just showing what the impact of some of the demographic changes can be. And we're going to jump to what will be page 7 of the presentation, the market value of assets. Now recall, this is still as of April 30th, 21. I know we're a little bit later in the year right now. There's been a lot of different things happening, but this is as of the valuation date. Fire began the year at $12.5 million. Police just under $18.8 million. The employer contributions of $1.27 million for fire, $1.7 million for police. The member contributions, $174,000 and $290,000 respectively. And then the investment returns, $3.76 million and $5.68 million for fire. That's those 30% numbers. That's really significant, really help the plans out. But in turn, we also look at how much you're paying out. What are your benefit payments? And this was alluded to a little bit earlier. You're paying out $1.6 million a year for fire, $2.4 million a year for police. Rounding out to get to your ending market value of assets. If we took a ratio of those benefit payments to your ending market value of assets, we're sitting right about 10% for each fund. And I think ideally, as was indicated before, we would like that to be under 7%. We would like to say investment returns are paying your benefits. So that means all the village contributions and all the employee contributions that are coming in are going to it where it needs to go to pay down your unfunded liability as it should, and to also secure the normal cost and the accrual of benefits by all the actives. To the extent that we start trickling above that 7% on that ratio, that means some of the contribution money that's coming in is going right back out the door. Okay, we're not getting to invest those dollars as prudently as we'd like to, and also creates a little bit more of a cash flow strain at times, having to liquidate assets sometimes to be able to keep paying those benefits. So as I understand it, you're down considerably from last year, which is a great thing. Hopefully that trend continues. That ratio decreased significantly because the market returns were so great. I know we can't expect a 30% return each year. We would love that to happen, but that's not realistic. So it's a number we like to keep an eye on, what that ratio turns out to be. In addition, if you flip the page to the next page, we take a look at what are those benefit payments going to do in the next 5 or 10 years. For fire, it's going to increase up to about $1.85 million, or about $250,000 in the next 5 years, and up to $2.3 million in 10 years. Similarly, for police, it's going to increase about $450,000 in 5 years, and up to $3.2 million in 10 years. So you're going to see your aging population, all the members that are currently in pay status, they're still getting those COLA increases. That's part of the reason why those numbers are going up. In addition, you're going to have some firefighters and officers that are getting to the period in which they're going to be retirement eligible. They're going to start taking their benefits. They're going to start increasing those contributions as well. That being said, with all the numbers that we calculate and everything that we produce from an actuarial perspective to give you a recommended contribution, takes these benefit increases in effect. So I'm not trying to be doom and gloom and scare you that these are coming. That's part of the contribution you're paying for right now, is to pay for these increases. Obviously, anytime you can put in a few dollars extra, that would just help the cause, and as I think was indicated earlier tonight as well, that would be, you know, better able to handle the volatility, especially in the short term where you do have a shortfall with regards to what percentage you're paying out compared to what you're actually expected to get through your investment returns. Okay. Any questions on that? The next page, we talk about risk management. I just spoke about the second bullet on each one. The first item was alluded to earlier as well with regards to your inactive liability compared to your assets. For fire right now, your inactive liability, out of the $30.1 million of total liability, 22.3 of that is for your inactive. So your retirees, your beneficiaries, surviving spouses, disabled members. So members that no longer work, they're all receiving benefits, is approximately 75% of their overall liability compared to 16.1 million of assets you have available. So all the unfunded liability you're paying right now, the majority of the contributions you're putting into the plan right now are for members that are retired and no longer working here anymore. Similar scenario for police. Out of the $43 million of total liability, 35.5 million of that is for your inactive membership, okay? And again, compared to 24 million, so about a $10 million shortfall of funded status for your inactive members. And we talked a little bit also about the expected rate of return. We're at 7%. The boards have had that under consideration about reducing that rate or bringing that rate down to, what would that do? For a 25 basis point decrease, so from going to 7 to 675, for fire would increase your contribution approximately 7% or about $105,000. Similarly for police, 7.2%, approximately $136,000. That would be the financial impact if you were to change those rates. Any questions on that? The next page shows the statutory minimum contribution. We know you fund towards the target contribution amount, the 100% funding. The statutory minimum, if you recall, is a 90% funding target versus a 100% funding target. This is what you would get from the DOI, Department of Insurance, as they give you your report each year stating what your minimum requirement expectations are. So for fire, 1.25 million, police, 1.5 million. So that difference between 90%, 100%, you know, is pretty substantial just in those funding targets themselves. The next page, we're going to shift a little bit from statutory funding and to the accounting side of it. So in addition to just producing recommended contribution amounts, we also help the village with their financial statement reporting under GASB 68 with regards to the police and fire pension funds. As a part of those reports, other than just determining the total pension liability, we're also asked to do what we call a solvency test. In order to complete that solvency test, we look at your contribution history. So here you can see a 5-year contribution history of what your, the first page on page 11 being for fire, your employer contribution compared to the actuarially determined contribution. And as you can see, you've been paying it out 100% as expected all the time, which is great to see. Similarly for police. If you go to page 13, the results of that test show the plan does project to remain solvent. So if you continue to pay the recommended contributions as they're being requested, you are expected to be able to cover all those future benefit payments in the future. So we talked about the 5-year increases, the 10-year increases, all that's built into this. So if you continue the path that you've been doing, to keep making those contributions on that recommended basis, you would project to remain solvent. And it's significant from the financial statement reporting side is if the plan was to become insolvent, you would then have to report a higher unfunded liability of total pension liability on your balance sheet, which then sometimes triggers items with rating agencies and those sorts of things when you start showing additional unfunded amounts. So that's a good path to be on, continuing this 100% funding. I know the pension boards are appreciative of that. And you know, it's also helping you out from a village from your own financial statement reporting perspective. And that's the conclusion of my report. I would open up for questions or comments from the board.
Sure. Any trustees have any comments? Seeing none, Mr. Reese, we appreciate you coming out. We appreciate your firm preparing the actuary reports for us. Again, we know that you are hired by the funds themselves, and the board does rely upon your reporting to make sure that we're doing what we're supposed to be doing. So thank you very much.
Welcome.
Peggy, I'm going to kick it there. Trustee Peterson, I should say. I'm going to kick it back to you for further comment on your thoughts.
My thoughts. Somewhere here. Here we go. This is I have in front of me the Village of LaGrange Police Pension Board, and they were requesting an additional they're requesting about $2,500 in addition to what the actuarial funding amount is. And rather than go through that all again, I will be supporting that. So the current motion on the floor is without it.
So I think what Trustee Peterson is saying is that she supports the police pension request for an additional $2,500. That is based on what we budgeted originally, but is not necessarily what we need. And so at this time, I would ask if any other trustees have a feeling that they want to express. If there is support for that, the procedure would be that there would be a motion to amend the motion. That would have to be seconded. We could conduct that then by a voice vote, and if that passes, then there would be another vote on the amended higher portion for the police pension. So with that, I would ask if there's any other trustee comments at this time. Trustee Gale.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would agree with Trustee Peterson to boost the contribution by that $2,552. I appreciate the comments from staff about the risk of any concerns about precedent, but to me this strikes me as a very minor. It's a pretty de minimis request, and I don't see why we wouldn't do it. It also demonstrates, at a time of a labor crunch, it demonstrates a commitment to public safety and our police, and I think it's something we should do.
Thank you, Trustee Gale. Trustee Augustine.
Thank you, President Kukler. This may be a question for Mr. Reese, who just sat, or Lou. But in thinking this all through, as we are tonight and as we do on these things, I've read the information regarding the not so much downside, but maybe the problems with even providing this minor increase. And I'm wondering if you could explain that one more time to us from your perspective, some of the shorter and longer term downsides of doing something like this, because there seemed to be a pretty good point involved, and I want to go to your expertise on this to understand it a little bit better, if you don't mind.
So, Trustee Augustine, are you asking for our Director Ciparrone's opinion or Bob's opinion, or both?
Both, if they'd like. If one is sufficient, it's either way. Both would probably be a great idea. I'd love to hear more on this. So.
I'll let Bob start, and then I'll fill.
Thank you.
Okay, can you repeat the question, please?
Sure. I'd like to understand more about this increase. You talked about smoothing and preparing for the higher earning years and the lower earning years, and that makes sense. But what I still don't quite understand is the ultimate downside to making this small contribution. So I'd love to know a little bit more, maybe explain a little bit differently why we shouldn't do this, how this could affect.
From my opinion, I don't see a downside to contributing more. I think the more money that goes into the funds, the faster. One, there's that shortfall of the benefit payments that you're chipping away at, which means you're going to keep more dollars invested to maybe earn for you in the future. And you're going to increase your funded percentage, and you're going to make a good presentation to the board themselves that you're answering their requests on that front. So putting money into the fund, I don't see a downside to that.
Sure, and I think that was the same perspective from the board when we had our meeting. From our perspective, or my perspective, I guess, it's not really so much the size of the contract. It really doesn't have a significant impact on the overall status of the fund. It's more of a policy decision for the board going forward. Historically, we funded based on required contributions, methodology, assumptions that are involved, and that's basically what drives the calculation. Actuaries provided to us. It's more of, I think, a question going forward when there is perhaps a more significant difference what the required contribution is. Then is that an annual decision that the board would be making rather than kind of following the policy that has been set previously? We had this conversation, I think, earlier in the evening about 2 years ago, and the question came up where there was a request for additional funds because the contribution was lower than what we had currently budgeted. And I think the conversation was, well, if we contribute based on the budget amount, when years where the actuarial contribution is higher than the budget, so it's really more of a policy statement for the board going forward, which could be if the required contribution is lower than the budget, the board could elect to simply levy at the budget amount to have additional funds contributed to the. But it's really trying to take that annual decision and make it a policy decision forward. So I think everybody is aware of what the contribution levels will. And again, this year they're $2,500 separate. So it's really not the amount. Like I said, really any amount, unless it's a significant increase in either assets, that would really change the funded status of the funds. But certainly additional dollars to the pension funds is a request that the board felt was reasonable in the situation.
Thank you both.
Thank you, and thank you, Trustee Augustine. Trustee Kotinik.
Thank you, Mr. President. I guess I would agree with Mr. Reese, right? You need to fund this at some point, so putting more money into it is never a bad thing. However, it is one pot of money, and the more we put into that takes away from essential services from the village. So, to me, a budget is just that. You draw it up today, and next week it's, or like a forecast, it's going to be different. So, in my opinion, I'm going to stick with the original motion. And I would prefer to rely on the actuarial assumptions on a yearly basis and keep that precedent. So that's my opinion on that.
Thank you, Trustee Kotinik. Anyone else? Okay. I wasn't sure where Trustee Augustine is leaning here. So again, the issue is, do you want to make a motion to amend the motion?
So it falls on me. I see very much both sides of this. As has been said, it's a very small contribution, but it all matters in the end. But now we're changing policy, and we're going to be having to examine this each year if we go this route, which I don't think is too hard of a decision to be made at that point. I don't think we're always going to have a lot of years like this. I would lean towards the side of contributing, because I think we had an amazing year. Let's take that little bit and help these funds out. But going forward, do we reset our policy? I don't know that we need to, but in this particular case, it's small, but it makes a difference, and we want to catch up as fast as possible. So that would be I would err on the side of amending.
Okay, with three people hearing that they were somewhat in favor, I need somebody to make a motion to amend the motion?
I move to amend the motion that the village board approve the resolution announcing the 2021 tax levy with the additional $2,500 to the police pension fund.
And I need a second on that motion.
Second.
Thank you, Trustee O'Brien. So at that time, well, why don't we do a roll call vote just for the record on that? And this again is just on the motion to amend.
Trustee Peterson?
Aye.
Trustee O'Brien?
Aye.
Trustee Kotinik?
Nay.
Trustee Gale?
Aye.
Trustee Augustine?
Aye.
Okay, and that motion to amend passes 4-1. So now before us is the amended motion, which will include the approximately $2,500 additional for the police pension fund. Is there any further discussion on the amended motion? Seeing none, I would then ask for a roll call vote on the amended motion.
Trustee Augustine?
Aye.
Trustee Gale?
Aye.
Trustee Kotinik?
Nay.
Trustee O'Brien?
Aye.
Trustee Peterson?
Aye.
And that motion passes 4-1, and it was passed, and the correct motions and paperwork will be performed by staff. Thank you, everybody, for participating in that. Moving on, we are done with our new business. We will be moving into closed session, but first, I would ask if there's any trustee comments.
I had some, do we want public comments not on the agenda, or did you want to wait?
We can do that, probably makes sense. First, is there anyone here with comments on matters that were not on tonight's agenda? Seeing none, then we'll move on to trustee comments. Trustee Gale.
Thank you, Mr. President. Sorry about that. I figured somebody else wanted to say something. Just with the
They still might.
Right, with the discussion of the holiday walk and the holidays coming up, it occurred to me I should mention having worked at the Attorney General's office for a few years. I worked in the Consumer Fraud Bureau. At this time of year, scams start to proliferate. I just want to encourage people to be aware and cautious of when you get notifications. For example, I got a text message from the Secretary of State's office on Sunday morning at 6:30, and I thought, well, that can't be right. So, of course, obviously a scam. But it made me remind me of sort of two of the rules we learned at the Attorney General's office. One is, it's too good to be true. It probably is. And then the other one is, do not give out your personal information when solicited for it. If you are, if you're paying for a pizza or something, of course give them your credit card. But if somebody calls you, do not share your personal information. So I just wanted to remind everybody of that and to keep themselves aware in this holiday season. Thanks.
Good advice, Trustee Gale. Any other trustee comments? I'll just jump in with a couple of things. First, I'd like to congratulate our Trustee O'Brien. He's been appointed to the board of the Legacy Guild, a great organization, so congratulations on that. And then, kind of prompted by Trustee Gale's reminders, I would just, we've now moved our clocks back. We're able to sleep an extra hour, but it gets so dark in the evening. It's so hard for cars to see pedestrians. I walk home from the train, and tonight I know that the car that almost hit me did not see me. And so again, I think it's so important for the drivers. I know that our police department is continuing with enforcements, but it's also on the pedestrians to try to be careful, be alert, and everybody be safe. So with that, let me say that we will be going into closed session. The village board is going to meet in closed session this evening under Section 2C11 of the Open Meetings Act. It's our intention to adjourn the closed session immediately, and then advise the village board will not reconvene to open session as no formal action will occur tonight. So at this point, I would ask for a motion to adjourn into closed session and request a second. And then we can discuss if anybody has any issues about going into closed session tonight. So a motion to go into closed session.
So moved.
Thank you, Trustee Kotinek.
Second.
Thank you, Trustee Gale. Any discussion on going into closed session? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed?
We need a roll call vote.
Thank you very much. We will move that now to a roll. That was just practice. We'll ask Clerk Saladino to lead us in a roll call vote.
Trustee Augustine.
Aye.
Trustee Gale.
Aye.
Trustee Kotinek.
Aye.
Trustee O'Brien.
Aye.
Trustee Peterson.
Aye.
And that motion to go into closed session passes unanimously. Thank you very much.